How often do you experience a real deep down joy in your life? And how transformative is it? What all does it do to transform you? And it is so important to understand these things because we live in such a stressful time and we have so many frustrations, and they so affect us adversely when we undergoing all of this stress that we have to undergo every day with the things that are going on in the world and so forth, and then you go through a lot of stresses on your at your job and your other things that you go through in this life, and they so affect you adversely that you need to be able to understand how to combat those. And getting a true deep down joy is one of the ways of doing that. And spending time just like as if it was a medicine or something else, giving yourself an actual period of time that you would actually consider a treatment against this stress and strain, and a treatment to release stress, and a treatment of true deep down joy, which will transform your entire being and bring you out of the effects of that stress and that strain. And what do I mean by joy? Well, joy is something that you can define by thinking about all the happiest moments you've ever had in your life, all those times of vitality and freshness, everything that you've had that was truly enjoyable in your life, rolling those all into one, multiplying it 1,000 times, and letting it flow through you just like a rapidly flowing stream, and let it flow all through every part of your body, and let all of that joy and that happiness affect you all over, and visualize and understand that it is affecting the body, because what we think does affect us. And there's joys, though, that go far deeper than what I've described here, that you will learn as you begin to get more into joy. There's such a thing as divine joy that goes just infinite number of times past anything that we would know of as a joy as an earthly joy, or a joy that would be that we would experience in just everyday life. And so we need to try to contemplate and think about what joy really consists of. And then when we begin to start understanding what joy consists of, and begin to understand then what we need to have in order to experience joy, and what kind of a mood we need to be in to really receive joy, then that puts us in the place where we can begin to do these exercises where we actually treat ourselves with a greater and greater joy every day, and that becomes just like a preventative medicine. So it's something that is vitally important to understand, and it's vitally important that I describe it to you so that you can understand it. We'll talk about having a greater vitality. We'll talk about having greater energy in our life. A lot of times people will talk about how they don't have energy. They don't have enough energy in their life, and that creates a lot of unhappiness because they just don't have the energy to really enjoy their life. And that's one of the things which these treatments of joy will do, is it will take away and wash out those things that are destroying that energy. And so there again, that's important if you want to have a life full of vitality and freshness and energy and being truly alive and really full of zest all the time. It's important to wash out all of the stresses and the strains and the frustrations which war against that real joy being able to move and take place and be able to do its real work. We've got to get the joy first, though, as I've always said. A lot of times the joy has to become before the healing, rather than, as we generally think of, you get healed and then you start leaping and praising God and thanking God for that healing. when really in actuality, a lot of times you're going to have to learn to understand what joy is first before you get the healing, and you've got to express that joy ahead of time. Because the very expression of that true deep down joy accomplishes a lot of healing things in your body. That very expression of that joy is a healing process. It does have a healing demonstration, a healing effect. And so we need to actually begin to practice this daily. We practice it every day, getting the thoughts of joy. You need to list down, what are all the thoughts of joy that I can think, and what will make me feel joy, what does make me more joyful, and I am going to make sure that I remember those things every day, especially during that 30 minutes a day that you should be spending going through this joy treatment that I talk about. During that 30 minutes, don't let anything else interfere. Don't let anything enter into that space. Reserve that space for joy. And remember, somehow or another, even if you've got to write it down, remember all of those most joyful times that you've ever had, and remember all the joys that you've experienced in previous times of doing this exercise. Always keep up with the joys that you receive and the inspirations that you receive during this 30 minutes a day that you're spending exercising this joy. Keep up with it all. And go over it again the next day and let it build up in your mind and in your life. And most of all, expect joy. If we could just understand the power of expectation and just say, I am going to expect more joy every day. I expect that. Just tell God, divine mind, your infinite spirit, the infinite divine being. Just tell God that you expect more joy every day, because after all, God is infinite joy. God is infinite love. We hear God is love all the time, but it also goes ahead and if we really understand it, He explains that God consists of all joy and has left us all joy and given us all joy, and there's no joy that He has withheld. And so God is infinite joy, and we have a right then to expect joy to be greater every day as we grow in our expectations of that, and as we grow in our ability to receive that joy from God. God is in the business of giving us that joy, so we have every right to expect it. So you should always start out with saying, I expect more joy this time than I had the last time. I fully expect it, and I expect that I will grow into 1,000 times more joy than I've ever had before. I truly expect that. Don't be expecting that you won't have joy. Don't expecting that things are going to get bad, or that don't be dreading things and thinking, I'm going to lose joy. Oh, it's going to be a day next week or something coming up that I won't have no joy that day, or something in the future that I won't have joy, or I'm expecting to not have it. No, you never do that. You always expect more joy every day, and exercise that. Because, as I've tried to explain, you have every reason to expect that. If you vow to yourself that I'm going to take this time every day to do these 30-minute treatments every day of making way and letting joy flow, then you're doing you're putting the ingredients into it, and you're doing the exercises that go into forming it, and you're doing the things that cause the demonstration to happen. You're following the directions. You're doing the things that are going to bring joy. So you have every reason to expect more joy. More joy every day. You have every reason in the world to expect it. And that is a joyful thought in itself. If you could just get it into your mind that joy is easy, because it's always here. And it's only us that don't bother to receive it. Where we're at in our thought, when we're not joyful, that's the only place joy is not. And just know that that's the only place, and that joy is always everywhere else, and all we got to do is receive it. And so that's a joyful thought in itself, and you can expect more and more of those joyful thoughts like that every day that you exercise receiving joy. And so What is joy then? I think you're starting to get an idea that joy is something that's going to be, you're going to be relieved, totally relieved of all stress and strain and anxiety, worry about the future, dread about certain things. You're going to be relieved of all these. The burden's going to be lifted of everything, every kind of financial burden or any other burden you have. It's going to be lifted, and you're going to spend that time every day in a period of nothing. Nothing will be taking place during that 30-minute period but that joy, and it'll be growing and growing more and more every day. And it'll be a high level of happiness and a high level of peace and a high level of everything that lifts you to a higher and higher level. Goes way beyond anything that any drug could ever give you. There's no drug that can give you that kind of high. There's no other experience excitement, an experience of excitement or enthusiasm of any kind that's going to give you that kind of joy and that kind of happiness. It's going to go way higher than any other thing that you can experience. Anything physical that you can experience in the way of excitement or drugs. It's a great joy, a leaping joy, a wonderful joy, a mountaintop joy, and you're heading towards that. Like Dr. Martin Luther King said, I have been to the mountaintop, looked over into the promised land. That's just a good little illustration and metaphor of everything. I like to allude to it often. And looked over into the promised land. You go up to the mountaintop, you look over in the promised land where you're going to have more and more and more joy, more and more enjoyment of life, more and more prosperity. Everything's going to happen in that promised land. All those things that are in that promised land, that flowing with milk and honey, flowing with all good things, all that is a representation of joy also. Your promised land is greater and greater and greater joy, and that joy producing greater and greater and greater energy. And all of that's going to go to produce every kind of abundance, prosperity, and everything else will fall right in line with that. But the main thing we're looking for, because we're looking for abundant health, first of all. And we're looking to relieve ourselves of the disease which would rob us of any future prosperity. And we're looking to relieve ourselves and to restore our body and to reverse aging and to slow down aging and destroy the processes that create aging and destroy the processes that create disease and illness, beginning to reduce the effects of years of aging, years of frustration, years of stress and strain. We reduce that by going to the opposite. You look at it as an opposite pole. Up here, over here is a pole of joy, and way over here to the opposite pole is that of frustration, fear, anxiety, stress and strain and all that. And you're leaving all that stress and strain and fear and anxiety and going up into the mountaintop and looking over into the promised land of joy, the joy that grows more and more every day. And as you look over into that promised land, you get a visualization of what that joy consists of, and then you're able to march toward it. I mean, it's just all stretched out before you down there below, and you're able to just move into it. And so we need to really, really get an idea of what joy is and then practice it every day, because it is so restorative and it's so healing and it's so relieving of all the things that destroy happiness. And so I'm going to pray right now, like I always do, for everyone that is sick or ill in any form, any kind of thing that's called disease, any kind of disease that's called curable or incurable or anything else, that you will be healed of every one of those in a mighty way by the mighty power of God right now. In the name of thy Holy Son, Jesus, heal people, raise them up out of any doubt and fear and anxiety, raise them up out of any sickness and illness, raise them up out of any sense of oppression, depression, or obsession of any kind, obsession or a habit or a bad habit. Raise them up out of any sense of addiction or to anything, and let's deliver them any bad habit, any addiction of any kind, and lift them up, dear God, to a great mountaintop. They can see the promised land of joy, and raise them above all sense of unhappiness, all sense of blues or depression. Raise them up, dear God, to a high mountain of joy, a joy like they've never had before in their life. And dear God, I just pray that everyone will experience this joy, and they'll exercise it every day and visualize it and understand how important it is to exercise it every day. and their joy will grow, and they'll grow, and their joy will grow and flow like a mountain stream flows downward. Their joy will flow all over them and increase their health and energy and longevity and so forth. I pray in the name of thy Holy Son, Jesus, amen, amen, and amen.